Hey friends, it's Kelly Thorngore. I'm a life and a business coach and so passionate about helping you create a life you love. We have been going through this 40-day prayer journey, Draw the Circle, by Mark Batterson. And today we're on day 29, and I need to apologize. Yesterday, I pre-recorded the video, but for some reason it only loaded 1 minute. So sorry about that. And I didn't see your messages until late in the day, but I have posted the YouTube link, and unfortunately Facebook doesn't really like YouTube, so you might not have seen that I posted it, but I did post it and it's in the Facebook group. So if you missed day 28, go back and watch that. And again, so sorry for the technical error. Not sure what happened, but I'm so glad you're joining us today. So let me know in the comments where you are joining us from. Good morning, sweet Kim. All right, so today we're talking about a new prayer. And I love his opening text in this one. It says, spiritual growth is a conundrum. The key to spiritual growth is developing healthy and holy routines called spiritual disciplines. But once the routine becomes routine, we need to change the routine. Now, all the alarms in my brain go off on this because I love routine. I thrive on routine. And so really my goal with a lot of things is get it in a routine. And so when he's saying, okay, wait, when it becomes a routine in our spiritual walk, we have to readjust it. We have to tweak it. And here's why. He says, because sacred routines become empty rituals if we do them out of our left brain memory. So if we just do them out of habit instead of our right brain imagination. So what he's saying is if we're doing it just to be habitual, and I often think of this as kind of some legalism. If we're doing our time with God just to check off the boxes to say we did it, we might be missing an opportunity to really connect with God and to really connect in a deep way that it's not just habitual, that it's this place of that intimate relationship. So I think about this. If you're married, you wouldn't just spend time with your spouse to check it off a list, even though that is on my checklist, so that I make sure I'm doing it. But I'm not thinking about, I'm just doing this because I'm marking it off my list. I'm thinking about it in the context of, I want to have this deep connection with my husband. I want him to feel loved and heard and valued. And in our connection times, that is how we do that. Yeah, Carol, it's an authentic place of connecting with God. And if you think about if you were meeting a friend for lunch, you wouldn't just have the same conversation every single time. That would be pretty boring. It would become very monotonous and you wouldn't want to do it. And so I think we have to switch up the routines in our walk with God as well. He goes on to say, we learn how and we forget why. We start going through the motions spiritually. Have you ever gone through the motions spiritually? Maybe you're in that season right now where it just feels like you're going through the motions. Like you're doing it because you said you would do it, or you're doing it because you know God wants you to do it, or you're doing it because your church says you should, or you feel this obligation, but it's just going through the motions versus deeply connecting with God and allowing him to give you visions and ideas and direction into your life. I often think about this in the context of, when we're having our time with God, it is very much a two-way conversation. It's not just us putting out our stuff. It's not just us doing all the stuff. It is God then speaking into our life. That was one of the biggest things when I really learned. For the longest time, I would just pour out my heart to God. I would have all these requests and things I was praying for. And then I would get to the end of the time and I was like, "Oh, well, I don't feel any better. I don't feel any better than I did when I sat down to have this time." And what I learned is that it was because I wasn't taking the time to listen. I wasn't taking the time to hear God speak into the situation. And this has become something that's really important to me. And so Dawn said, "I'm not sure I agree with him completely." And she goes on. So read that in the comments from Facebook because I can't see the whole comment just yet, but I'll go back, Dawn, and read it. But I will say, again, every time you hear someone speak, whether it's me or you hear someone share their opinion, whether you're reading a book or listening to a pastor, you always want to funnel it through, what is God speaking into your heart? And is that the word he has for you? And if not, ask him to clarify it. Don't just take what someone else says and own it as what you should believe. So I love, Dawn, that you're digging in deeper there. Okay, he says, our tendency is to do things the way we've always done them. And he says, it's mindlessness when we do it the way we've always done it. If you think about this from the perspective of driving in your car, have you ever gotten in your car and you just all of a sudden end up the place that you're supposed to go, but you don't really remember driving there? Hopefully I'm not the only one who has this. So there's that, but then there's also, there have been times where like I moved to my office and I got in my car and I was going to the grocery store, but I ended up in the office parking lot. And it was because it was such a habitual pattern that I was used to. I think about that. I've done that several times now that my kids have been out of school. I'll be going somewhere and I'll end up in the parking lot at their school, which is, on the way to everything else. But still, it's this habitual thing that we get in the habit. And it shows up in lots of ways in our lives. Okay, he says, we do things without thinking about them. And if we aren't careful, we pray without thinking. And this is just as destructive as thinking without praying. So I know for me, one of the routines that I don't see myself giving up is prayer journaling, because this is a way that keeps me focused. This is a way that allows me to connect with God and to go back and see how he answered the prayers. And so one of the things I'll often do in my time with God is I just write out my prayers. And I have tons and tons of journals that one day will be a piece of my legacy to my children, of just all these prayers that I have prayed over the years. And so that's the way that it keeps me focused. I'm being mindful versus mindless. And that's a routine that I don't really see switching up. Now, God might do that. But there have been other times where I felt like I needed to switch up the routine. And sometimes that's usually not because it's become habitual, but because it no longer works in that season of my life. I know I had a very intentional way that I did my time with God once my kids went to school each day. And now they're home. And so that looks really different. And so I don't have as much time as I did before. I would have to wake up at crazy hours in the morning, and I still wake up at 5:30 to have that time, but it's carving out that space and it's finding what works for you. So just because it works for Mark Batterson one way, just because it works for me, doesn't mean that's how you should do your time with God. And again, we don't want to do this from a place of legalism. We want to do it because we want to spend time with God. Think about you wanting to spend time with your spouse or wanting to spend time with a best friend. That is what we should approach our time with God. It should be this longing and this excitement. And so I know for me, one of the keys to my time is I love worship music. And so having worship music on and just having that like really set the tone of my day and my time with God, of that, safe space is really important to me. And it creates that excitement feeling that I love. All right, so his last thing is If you want God to do something new, you can't keep doing the same old thing. And really that applies to every area of our life. If it's the same with your health, if you want to be healthier than you are now, you can't keep doing the same old thing that you've been doing. You've got to change it up. You got to switch it up. If you want your marriage to be like more intimate, you can't keep doing the same thing you're doing. You have to change it up. Because the reality is, if we don't make these changes in all areas of our life to improve it, 5 years from now, we're going to be in the exact same place we are today. But if you're continuing to expand, if you're continuing to read books, if you're sitting with God, if you're asking Him to speak into these areas of your life, and then you're doing what He shows you to do, then that's when we create the change. That's when we see God move in big ways because we are partners with Him. It's not just Him doing this miraculous thing. It's Him showing us each next step and giving us the courage to then take the step. I very much see our relationship with God as a partnership. All right. I want you to dig into this because maybe you're like Dawn and you're thinking, okay, no, I don't need to change up my routine. It's all good. I don't agree. That's totally fine. That's fine. In fact, I would just encourage all of you to seek God through this entire thing, which you've been doing, but continue to seek Him and ask Him, okay, what are the parts that are for me? I know for me, one of the things that I have switched up during this 40-day prayer challenge is 2 specific things. So one is Tuesday, so today actually, during my work time. So I have like focused work time that I get to get my work done. And that's why my kids are resting. And so one of the things that God showed me out of this journey as kind of a switch up, I've never done this before, is that Tuesdays during their rest time, instead of working, that's my time to pray over my business. It's my time to pray over my team, over my people. And the thing that God showed me was pray and inspire. Pray and inspire. So rather than doing traditional work, my work time is to pray and inspire. And so I just want you to know that there are ways that you can change it up. Another one is I've created a new prayer space in my closet, and I am loving it. Of just this dedicated space that I can pray in the mornings. And so that's different than other things I was doing. So that's how I've chosen to switch up the routine and what I felt nudged to do. All right. I hope you have an amazing Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow.